Welcome to Podsongs, where we interview inspirational people in service to others as inspiration for a new song. Today's guest is Professor Dan Siegel of the UCLA School of Medicine and Mindsight Institute, and my musical collaborator is singer-songwriter Will Clapson. Okay, how did you get to Mallorca then?
My wife's originally from here, and we met in London, and then it was just after starting to do music full time. We wanted to buy a house. We couldn't afford to get a mortgage with our jobs because we both, are kind of self-employed, and so we decided to come and have a go here, and we've been here 3 years now.
For love, yeah. Same with me. My girlfriend's Italian.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here.
Oh, nice. How long have you been there?
9 years now.
9 years. Wow.
Yeah.
And I take it you haven't looked back since.
No, well, I actually lived in Amsterdam before, so I haven't lived in England since 1999. So it's England's a long distance memory.
Yeah.
But whereabouts in Essex are you from then?
Kind of a little village called Felsted, which is sort of about half an hour from Stansted Airport.
Okay.
Like between Stansted Airport and Colchester, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
I must have been there because I'm from near Bury St Edmunds, so.
Oh, nice.
That's a stone's throw.
Yeah. No, Suffolk's the next one up.
Yeah. And so you're Mallorca. I've been there a long time ago when I was very young. But yeah, it's a beautiful place. Which part?
We're in Palma, in like the main sort of town, really, where they're next to the airport.
Okay.
We were very central when we moved here, but now we've moved a little bit out of the centre of the town, and yeah, like I used to come here when I was little because like a lot of English people would go on holiday in Mallorca. But I never imagined that I'd live here. But yeah, I've loved it.
Yeah, well, no plans to go back now.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and what about Brexit? Have you had to get a passport or?
Yeah, I mean, I have actually picked up my residency card today.
Oh, congratulations!
Yeah, so I'm now officially a resident of Spain.
Oh, great.
Yeah. How about you? Was that all? How did you get around to the whole Brexit thing?
Yeah, I got residency too because of my partner. So yeah, it was a big mess up. That, jeez. Yeah. But anyway, that's a whole another conversation. And I see you've been very busy with the music on your. You've got an album coming out tomorrow. Is that right?
I've got a single coming out tomorrow.
Okay.
But I've confused a lot of people because I've been releasing using like a waterfalling technique. So every single that I release is attached to like all the other previous singles. So it looks like I'm releasing an EP every time I release a single, but it's just a way of getting people to listen to your kind of other songs. But it is confusing to people that aren't aware of it. But yeah, the album comes out on the 27th of August.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it should be out by then. And so I'll be watching on YouTube as well. You have you're putting out a lot of content there about how to write a song in 2 hours as well. So, because with a few of my musical guests, I'm worried, it's a long process and it's like pulling teeth, but I'm confident with you. I'm going to get the song in the inbox tomorrow morning. Yeah.
Good. I can definitely write. Like, I think it's a nice challenge to write a song about something. Like I've done writing to briefs, but writing about a podcast or writing about a guest or so is a different it's interesting. But I've loved the stuff that you've done. Like I was listening over the last few weeks to all your, and it's interesting listening and then thinking about the guest or like looking at the guest afterwards. Like it's interesting to do. Like, because how long have you been doing it now? It's a little while, right?
Yeah, I launched in November, but I actually started recording in July. So because I'm always 3 months ahead, and But yeah, I'm up to 100 episodes now, so I've got a good rhythm.
Yeah. No, and how have you found? Have you struggled sometimes to get there, or is it just always? I guess others are more difficult than some are more difficult than others, right? With writing.
Yeah, I mean, I do it when they are always straight away while the iron is hot, because I research the guest in the morning while I'm gardening, with I listen to old podcasts that they've been on, because if I research them too much in advance, I could have 15 people floating around my head, and it's so I've been listening to Dan Siegel all morning, and then I'll try and write the song straight after the podcast.
Yeah.
So that, if you can, it's a discipline, but it's actually easier if you do it that way.
Yeah, so. That makes sense. Like, I think I'll probably at least do lyrics.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't operate very well past 7 to 8 p.m.
All right, well, if you start nodding off in the interview.
Yeah, then, I'll be all right until then. It's just like, if I have to be creative or write music, or I'm the opposite of a cliche of a musician. I work best in the morning.
Morning, those early morning rays, when you've been thinking about the interview all night, sometimes I do the song in the morning as well, and then it's going to be a more relaxed piece. Usually the upbeat songs in the night, I found, and then the calm meditative ones, where you could tell that was an early morning one.
Yeah.
Oh, and nice. you actually, there was Synchronicity, wasn't it? Because Neil Harbison, the cyborg, I interviewed him last week, and your wife works
amazing.
for him.
Yeah. How that was weird when I was going through the list. I was like, I know Neil.
So she works for him remotely then, because he's in Barcelona. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, they did live kind of in the same city for when they first started working together, and then. Just like there wasn't really much need, and Neil was, before COVID, was traveling all over the world. It wasn't. She could be anywhere. She's really just managing and organising all their kind of hectic schedule.
Yes, and have you've met him as well?
Yeah. We've met a few times. I remember when we first started dating, one of our third dates was going to one of his events and seeing Neil and Moon, the other artist that Marina works with, and I was blown away. It was crazy. I'd not even heard of them before I met her. But yeah,
because this was when you were all living in London back then.
Yeah, well, Neil was living in New York when we met, but he had an event in Birmingham, I think it was, in the UK. So we went there to see them. Yeah, Neil and Moon both perform. It was amazing.
And what's the performance? What does that involve?
So Neil was basically connecting his antenna to space and composing a piece of music live using the kind of the color spectrum from space. I think infrared, ultraviolet. Okay. Which one's in space? Ultraviolet, I think it is.
I think so. Yeah, it sounds about right.
But yeah, because his antenna can perceive sounds that can perceive sights that the human eye can't. So he was doing basically a composition from space. It was pretty intense. I remember there was people that walked out because it was quite atonal, and the space isn't bothered about composing music for Westerners' ears. And so and then Moon, her performance was Waiting for Earthquakes, where she did she's a contemporary dancer, and she had a chip in her arm that could that vibrated whenever there was an earthquake on the planet. And depending on where it was on the Richter scale, it would change in intensity. And she did this performance basically live to the earthquakes going on the planet. It was pretty, it's crazy. It's really cool, really interesting.
That's a great title, Dancing to Earthquakes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I can talk to you about podcasts I've already done, so that's funny. But we've got a few more minutes. We should probably talk about Dan Siegel.
Yeah.
So why did you choose to want to speak to him?
I guess it's kind of self-serving reason in a way. I was ordered a book around the same time from him, The Whole Brain Child. It's still not arrived yet, which is frustrating. I was hoping that I could have read a bit of it, but
we'll ask him where it is. Maybe he could track it for us on this.
Yeah, exactly. but yeah, the whole brain, the 12 revolutionary stages to nurture a child's developing mind. I was really interested in, I'm having a baby in October. And so I have always been interested in child's development anyway.
And you're a bit worried.
Yeah, and I guess I'm interested to find out some, I guess, like his perception on the pandemic and its effect on children, and just like I'm really interested in child psychological development, and that's something that's always fascinated me. And yeah, he's one of the kind of pioneers really of like writing about that. He's written some amazing books. So
I was checking on your Spotify profile, you were quite open there that you've had some traumatic experiences as a child, and you're writing from the new album is I guess as many artists do, we all look in for material when we're not doing podcasts.
Yeah. No, I mean the whole album is about my kind of childhood, and I think I don't know, I feel like it's kind of obvious, like even in most psychological kind of therapeutic circles, it's kind of wildly accepted that your childhood is kind of the thing that dictates how you are as a person, and you know how you kind of navigate the world. But I think it's still not given the priority that it should be, I think, in society. And I think that but Dan seems to be like, I don't know, he's got from what I've read of his, I haven't actually read a whole of any of his books yet, but from what I've seen online and spoke to people about, it just seems like he has an understanding for the child's mind and the developing child's mind, which I find fascinating.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe
and hopefully useful as well.
Oh yeah, hopefully. Well, you wouldn't believe how many of my guests have said that they had some huge awakening or insight about how some childhood experience was affecting their adult behavior, and in such a dramatic way, and they had these realizations. So yeah, I never realized before, but it's childhood can be stays with you.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and it's crazy how early as well. Like that's something I've only realized, you know, when I've started kind of reading books about kind of child development, is like your personality can be kind of, parts of it can be put in place as early as like before you're a year old, which is, I find crazy. I thought, I feel like people are like, they don't remember anything until they're like 4. Like, I can't remember anything from my like 11 years old really, other than really bad stuff.
Last week is even a blur for me. So
yeah, but no. So I was excited. Like when I saw his name, it was kind of obvious to me. Yeah.
So that's interesting. Yeah, we could go for a song of. Yeah, it could be about you expecting a child, you know, and you're the being a parent and having your role reversal and that responsibility of, you have to do a good job now. And
I think. I find it.
He wrote one book for parents. His latest book, The Power of Showing Up, is for parents as well.
Yeah.
So
he's got a bunch, and even a book that I got recommended to me recently, I didn't realize it was by him, was Aware, the Science and Practice of Presence as well, about kind of mindfulness. And he's written a whole bunch.
This could be a long interview. Well, I don't. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, how do you come to find the guest? Like,
well, because I'm quite a new podcast, I don't have the luxury of people coming to me, so I have to reach out to many people who've been on all the other podcasts. So, and then whoever's interested. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it's not that I haven't been interested. I've got so many songs about the mind, though. I mean, I've done a whole album about it. So, yeah, but I guess it's an infinite subject now.
Yeah, no, it really is. Like,
how batshit crazy we are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
just pretending to be okay most of the time.
Yeah, I guess people like him, I guess he's been doing this so long, his work kind of filters down to what we know with mindfulness, and that we just, our generation just kind of absorb. No, it's just everyone kind of knows about it, but I guess we kind of take it for granted, no? That we kind of shouldn't. We shouldn't listen to the voice in our head. Yeah.
No, like it makes sense. Like I think like it's crazy how few people meditate still, or and how it's not like. I feel like, again, this may be naive. I don't even know in the UK specifically, like if they are now introducing mindfulness into. I know in certain kind of schools they are, but I find it crazy that it's sort of only happening now. Like the power of it. I guess it's not had enough research into the power of kind of mindfulness and those kind of practices. How important it can be, especially for schools, like for even like a practical sense for teachers to kind of teach children how to focus and how to.
You think it would? I mean, it would make their job as teachers a hell of a lot easier. Yeah,
for sure. But I guess it's just it's probably dismissed early days as kind of psychological kind of waffle. I feel like there's a lot of those practices are.
I would have thought back in the day. Most. I guess we're in the kind of we're in podcast land now, so I guess most of my listeners have a meditation practice. I would just assume, because I just kind of take it for granted, really, I don't know how you would really live without it.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, my wife doesn't meditate.
Yeah, mine neither. So, but she's a bad example. Yeah, she's crazy too.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
but we have to meditate to cope with them. So
exactly, that's it.
Yeah.
I meditate for the both of us.
Yeah. I think it must trickle down. It must help them a bit. I think eventually they'll come around. No, what's your?
Yeah, no, I think she's a lot more rounded as an individual than I am. So
okay.
She's kind of got meditative practices that don't look exactly like meditating, but I feel like she has, things that she does that, and I feel like she can just focus her mind a lot better than I can in general. Like she can multitask better.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
That's kind of like a sexist cliche that men can't multitask, but I fall into that cliche 100%.
Yeah, but imagine how good she would be if she actually did meditate. I mean, that's
exactly.
She'd go to a new level.
I think maybe I should make sure she doesn't meditate, so she doesn't get too
yeah, too far ahead of you.
Yeah, I realise that hand gestures are kind of useless if alone on a podcast.
Yeah, keep it to audio.
Yeah.
And
so when is Dan joining?
He any moment, yeah.
Ah, cool.
And then people can find more about you on your website, Jack in Water.
Yeah, jackinwater.com. I kind of put everything on there as it comes out, or on all the social media platforms. It's Jack in Water or Jack in Water Music. Yeah.
Why Jack in Water is the question you get asked all the time. It's kind of a boring story how it started. It actually started. Me and a friend wanted to start a band. We were thinking of a band names, and so we decided to write a story, and then we'd title that story, and that would be the name of the band. And the story was about a little girl who went in search of kind of this utopian society, got sucked underwater one day and found a bunch of creatures, and then she left the water to tell everyone, it's going to be come down here, it's brilliant, and no one believed her. And then there was a huge apocalypse, and she ended up living underwater with the people, which is a really long-winded story. But now what I tell people is that Jack's just quite a common name for a person where I'm from, as your name is Jack. No offense. A lot of people assume I'm called Jack, which makes sense. And it's the water being the kind of metaphor for life. And I guess it's my small little perspective on my outlook on life is the kind of how I describe it now. But I thought I'd be honest about the actual and
origins.
Maintain your anonymity in me as well.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you play live as well? Do you have any?
I haven't for a while, obviously, because of COVID, but I'm starting rehearsals to start gigging again. Got a few things booked, some festivals early next year. But yeah, I haven't booked a lot because obviously with the baby coming, I want to make sure that there's no chance of me being away.
Yeah, that's going to be a big thing, I think. Yeah. I've heard.
Hello.
Hello,
hi,
Dan.
How are you?
Very good,
Very well.
thank you.
How are you?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Nice to see you.
You too.
So I'm Jack. I'm the host of the show, and Will is
Hi, Jack.
our special musical guest, who you
Hello.
are
Hi, Will.
you will inspire with your many witticisms and insights and intelligence.
Okay, well, I'll do my best.
We've just been chatting about your many books, and you've not made it easy for us in terms of narrowing it down. So
Well, what's most helpful for both you and Jack, you and Will? What would be most helpful to inspire a song?
Well, I kind of self-servingly, I'm about to have a baby, my first
Oh
baby.
my gosh! Well,
in
that makes it easier.
in October.
Your first?
Yeah, my first.
Wow! Congratulations.
Thank you. And so I'm really interested, specifically with kind of your work in parenting styles and like all of the work that you've done. Kind of, I've actually ordered the book, the Whole Brain Child, 12 Revolutionary Stages, Strategies to Nurture Your Child. And probably will buy a bunch of other books as well.
Well, great. Well, that's a good inspiration.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. And then how do you two work together, you and Jack, in terms of letting this emerge?
well, we're conceiving it now, and then we need
Okay.
9 months of careful consideration and nurturing, and then
Yeah.
before we birth it in early 2021.
Okay. All right. Well, let it be a wonderful gestation. That's great. Good. Well, it's very inspiring for me. My first child, who's now 31, is a musician. So he and I are always talking about. He's a songwriter and a musician and a composer. So we're always talking about the creative process for him and watching these pieces emerge. So I was fascinated with your invitation to see how these different ideas could turn into a musical experience for people. So it's great.
Yeah.
If you're going to focus on parenting, it brings up, the whole idea of relationships and the really fascinating pattern that seems to emerge, that what you see in how you connect with your child, and Will, this is going to happen soon for you as your child is born, in a way becomes an example of what will happen inside your child's body. And one part of that body is the head, so the head brain, and the way that brain will become integrated, that is, different parts will be linked to each other, will be stimulated and supported and nurtured by how you allow both differentiation and linkage to happen in your relationship. So that's kind of, as a scientist, that was an amazing pattern to start seeing, that relational integration meaning the harmony that's created when you allow, for example, different voices in a choir to be differentiated, but then they're linked in a continuum of the song. The same thing is true in how parenting is. Secure attachment is one way of describing this loving, attuned relationship that's integrated. But then when you look inside the child's brain, it becomes integrated to create resilience and well-being. And that's reflecting the relational integration that happened. And that was so simple. I kept on telling these interns working with me, you've got to show me that it's wrong, because it can't be that simple. Relational integration leads to neural integration, which is the basis of regulation, which is the basis of happiness and health.
Wow.
And they couldn't, so they couldn't find anything to go against it, and tons of research to support it, even though it's not said. So that in terms of parenting and these ideas, that's you don't want to ever be a preacher about things, or you're pushing some idea. But with these interns, I got to say, we spent a year trying to find anything that went against it, and all we could find was literally thousands of scientific papers that in various ways you could see they were supportive of this simple pattern: relational integration, leads to neural integration, leads to optimal regulation and optimal resilience and well-being.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
So that's what you and your co-parent in co-piloting the experience of raising a child. If you just keep that in mind in the exhausting hours ahead, not to freak you out, but there's an opportunity to just remember that simple equation. And another one, just to throw out something that might simulate a song, is people, as an educator, people always asking me to try to say how they can remember some of the science. And here's the phrase: where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. So our ability as parents or as therapists or teachers is to harness the power of attention, which is the process that determines energy flow, whether it's relationally or inside the body. And that's the secret of the sauce. Attention drives energy flow. Energy flow activates genes to lead to literal anatomic changes in the brain.
Wow.
So, for example, in families where you talk about feelings and talk about the inner nature of experience, like thoughts, those kids develop different neural structures that allow them to have what I call mind sight, and they can actually see the mind, mind sight, perceiving subjective experience, feelings, thoughts, beliefs, longings, desires, and they kind of develop an internal compass. So for both our kids, one is the musician I was mentioning, the other is now doing a 6-month, 2,200-mile hike from Georgia to Maine, the Appalachian Trail. But her internal compass is just so strong about getting herself on this trail and doing, this work, that it's just beautiful to see as they're young adults, that this energy you put in and this focus of your attention as parents really does support, the development of aspects of your child's capacities, in this case, mindsight, to have this inner compass.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah. If you have any more phrases that rhyme like that, please keep putting them out, because it saves us work.
Yeah. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. That's one. A relational integration leads to neural integration, which is the base of all regulation. That's a lot of rhyming.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's another one. I'm sure there is one. I say name it to frame it. I used to say name it to tame it, but in terms of naming an emotion, but some people got offended by the word tame, which I appreciate. So I changed it to frame. And the idea is that we are very narrative creatures. I think songs are a beautiful example of narratives, And when you see how much energy and time humanity spends with storytelling, listening to songs, hearing poems, reading books, watching film, we are so narrativized. It's beautiful, actually. And narratives are how we make sense. So when you look in the brain in terms of language and brain function, it's really that simple. When you name your internal state like an emotion, and this is why teaching a child to name her feelings, name his feelings, their feelings, what happens in the brain studies is you frame it so that instead of the emotion being all over the place, you're able to say, oh no, that's sadness I'm having now. It's sad because, my guinea pig died. And I can understand what happens when something you love dies, you feel sad. So that would be a kid who can name it to frame it, versus a family where they never talked about emotions. The guinea pig dies. Now the kid is throwing rocks at the window and the parents are saying, stop doing that, you bad kid. And, no one just mentioned the sadness about the pet dying because the mind wasn't part of what this family talked about. And you see this remarkably when you're not taught as a kid how to be aware and pay attention to the inner life of the mind, then the mind is a mystery to you. And the feelings arise in everybody, but you don't have this mind sight ability to see the sadness and say, oh yeah, my guinea pig died. I feel really glum. I don't really feel like doing anything. My parents are saying, of course you're glum. Your guinea pig just died. why don't you come here and I'll give you a hug? Whereas the other kid is now being yelled at, and if they're in school, they're getting in trouble, and all they needed was someone to give them either a virtual hug or an actual hug and say, we see you, and your sadness is embraced here. It's like the Rumi poem, The Guest House, invite any emotion in and let's find meaning in it. Because, and here's another amazing finding from the science of it all, emotion and meaning in relationships are three things, and the body, four things, I guess, that go hand in hand in hand. Emotion, meaning, relationships, and the body. And even when you look in the parts of the brain that mediate emotion, if you're rejected, for example, and feel sad, it's the same part of your brain as if someone was stabbing with you with a knife. Yeah.
Wow.
The relationships in the body are actually represented in the same area of the brain for physical pain or social pain. It's amazing. We are literally social creatures. We're embodied and we're relational, and that's really where the mind is. So, that's I guess what I've been working on for the last 30 years is, when I started in the field of mental health, it was just, the mind is what the brain does. And I'm trained in brain science. My teacher of brain science got the Nobel Prize. I mean, he was like a big dude. And even so, you can have that background, and I can say mind is not just what the brain does. And that's been a big, a project for 30 years to get the field to say, okay, we're not going to equate mind with brain. Brain is part of mind. Mind is much bigger than the body, broader than the brain,
Have you, Eben Alexander, have you met him? Have you read his books?
I have. He's the one on Heaven, the Proof of Heaven.
Yeah.
We once rode in a car for quite a long time and had a very interesting conversation. Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I'm fascinated with his experience. I myself am fascinated with his conclusions. I think there are other interpretations of them than what he offers to the world, even hearing directly what he experienced. So I think, everyone's entitled to their own interpretation.
Isn't it funny how we're all on a spectrum? So you're far to the, well, we should say left to the right, or some people, but then there's people far beyond you, and we're all just on this spectrum of where we put our beliefs now.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, the word beliefs, Jack. I don't think you have to give up. I mean, some people will say science has no place for the idea of like human purpose or human meaning, and we'll go toward a feeling, a belief, and say things like, don't use science to address my belief system. And I guess for me, my belief system, I suppose if you want to put it that way, my life way of living, says more like what's called consilience. There should be a way, I feel, and it's a feeling, but where it all fits together and you don't have to escape science. So this is a big difference, yeah.
Where do you stand on reincarnation?
I'm fascinated with it, and I'm really concerned with people's well-being here. So even if reincarnation doesn't exist, and maybe it does, I think there's a lot of work to do to, end, social injustice, and to really end poverty and violence, and really work on how we're destroying nature. And all of that we can do in a lifetime, and then try to inspire our children and youth to love nature and love each other in this lifetime. And, if we get to come back in human form or other form, that would be really fascinating, and I'm ready for it. I think there's an additional way of seeing things, which is maybe different from reincarnation, Jack, but, it's about what physics has discovered, which for some reason people are just not that aware of. I don't know why, but it's pretty, available to everybody. But that there are two realms of our one reality. There's the realm of large objects called macrostates that Isaac Newton discovered, and then there's a microstate realm of very small things that have totally different properties.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, in the Newtonian realm, you have what's called an arrow of time and a directionality of change, that we probably call the word time, our awareness of that change. But there's a realm that's without an arrow of time, the microstate realm. And there are no nouns like in the Newtonian world. Things are like entities that have separation in time and space. But in the quantum realm, this microstate realm, there is no separation in time and space. There is no time, in fact. There's no arrow of time. There's no directionality of change. And things are massively interconnected as verbs. So it's kind of like the experience you have maybe swimming in a lake versus walking on the land. No one like gets really agitated and goes, "Oh my God, there's the water realm and there's the the land realm. What's going on here? What's going on here?" But we have two realms, and there's a practice that sort of came upon me around a table in our office called the Wheel of Awareness. And in the center of the wheel, the hub, you get pure awareness. On the rim is anything you're aware of, and you just do this practice. So, when I did this with literally tens of thousands of people would get into what looks like, this is now a guess, correlates with the microstate realm. It's timeless. There's a feeling of connection, open awareness, and love that come up. So someone who lived near Sir Isaac Newton's house had me do the wheel practice around the apple tree. And so we were able to go from the rim, which is like Newtonian, to the hub, which is more quantum, I think. Anyway, around the tree. So what's interesting about that when it comes to reincarnation is even in this embodied form, you can tap into a timeless realm where you are connected to past generations of ancestors, future generations of descendants. And there's a quality you experience there of deep connection where space and time are kind of meaningless divisions. And even the word self becomes more like this, widened unfolding, this verb-like connected experience.
Yeah, I heard that wheel of awareness. People had some crazy experiences just from a half an hour practice there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and exactly. So,
wow,
those are some ideas for you guys. This is so
keep it coming.
all
Keep
over
it coming.
One thing that I thought with regards to, I guess, quantum physics and just kind of linking it to childhood and this idea that like attention to a child develops, like, I can't remember what you said, but the attention to the more attention you give, the more it kind of fills them with energy. Or I can't remember what the exact.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like this fun shirt I wore on purpose, energy equals mindfulness times the speed of light squared, The notion that is so interesting is energy, in a sense, is the stuff of the universe, and it is also the stuff of the mind. Some patterns of energy are information, and some are just pure energy. So like when you sing a song, for example, you're going to have the words be symbols. They're linguistic symbols, but there's still energy on the acoustic energy of air molecules moving for sound, right? So it's energy flow. A subset of that is information. Energy is, when it's in a formation that is symbolic, we call it information, right? So, but when you're actually doing the notes, it's just they are what they are. Now, obviously, they have relationships in spacing and timing and texture and tone that give them all sorts of qualities, but they are themselves, And I think this is, in some ways, why music is so important in our lives, because it is probably the direct language of the universe in some ways.
Sound, yeah.
Yeah, sound. Mm-hmm. It's the closest, we have probably to kind of bringing the inside out and the outside in. And, it's why it's so important and captivating. And, I remember when our son was saying, well, should I go become a scientist or go become a musician? And he realized he wasn't going to become anything. He already was a musician and he just couldn't get it out of him. And so It was how do you follow your true path. You both may have had that experience too, and then to realize that the sharing of the art of music is fundamental to the well-being of humanity, I think. And so any ways that all of you can remind us of our grounded way of being on the planet and alive, is a gift for well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of studies with children, happiness in children if they hear music. And actually one of my other guests, Rick Beato, he played very complex classical music, like super information heavy classical music when the baby was in the womb, and for the first for the first year of its when it was a baby, and his son grew up with perfect pitch. He learned languages very quickly. He could memorize pi, I think, for 400 digits. He was just a super incredible brain he was born with from this.
Wow.
Yeah. Have you had any experiences like that? Was that?
I just did the one experience where I would sing to both our kids when they were in the womb. But then the only outcome we got was that when I would sing to our son when he was young, he would cry. But no, I believe in that. I really do. I mean, it's it's a fantastic finding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Get the stereo on, Will.
Well, my wife's been because it's going to be a little girl, and she's just at the stage where she's starting to move in the womb, and like my wife Marina can feel it, and so she's been playing different kinds of music and playing some of my music to her as well, and it definitely she starts to move when she hears music.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no question the nervous system is responding to sound and other things too they're experiencing. After a certain period of time, the nervous system is able to make connections within itself based on the flow of energy into it. Where attention goes is basically where the energy is flowing, neural firing flows, and the neural connection grows. So, keep that up, I would say.
Yeah.
But I've already done a song on that one, so we can't do that.
What's that?
I've already done a song on that.
The
science of sound based on that kind of thing. So to do a completely different subject, Will.
Yeah. We'll do something else.
One thing that I thought was interesting, you're talking about like how important it is to kind of name it and frame it, like to understand your kind of inner world, your emotions. And I feel like that's something that can you see a cultural difference across like, the world, like where certain countries are just naturally seem to be better at talking openly about their emotions and how that impacts, the general well-being of the population? I don't know if like...
It's very interesting. We had the opportunity to actually do a small informal study of this. And we went to Africa, and we went to Namibia in particular. And there the San tribes are thought to be, related to some of the original ancestors for all of humanity. So we thought, okay, that might be a good place to go. And there are some interesting studies of their language. So we asked them exactly that to see, well, if this was like the original language or close to it, of humanity, do they have these mindsight words, this words talking about the inner nature of the mind? And they did. They were fully able to articulate all sorts of inner aspects of the mind. Now, what we did not do was within that village see, okay, the culture has it, but did some families within the village do it more than others? Because that's what you see, let's say in the United States or in England, when you study attachment, you find that about 20% in the United States of the main attachment figure does not use much mindsight language at all, even though they're in a culture where it's available in language form. They just don't use it. And then about 55% or so do use it readily, and those kids develop quite differently. And even an amazing study of deaf children showed that when deaf children were raised by hearing parents who didn't know how to use sign language very well, they did not develop this capacity for reflecting on the inner life of the mind. I call it mindsight. Peter Fonagy beautifully calls it mentalization or reflective function. This other concept is called theory of mind, where you have a notion that I have feelings, but I can name them. I have thoughts, I can name them. I have beliefs, I can name it. This is where the name it to frame it broad idea comes from. So there, what you see is in the study, if you were a deaf child raised by hearing parents who didn't know how to sign the language of the mind, by the time you were 3 or 4, you did not develop this theory of mind, mentalizing mindsight capacity. It was almost as if you were autistic. You weren't, because kids with autism have a hard time with this. Those deaf kids raised by deaf parents had fully developed mindsight abilities. So that's where the research supporting the idea that we develop this through conversations. I call them reflective dialogues, even if the dialogue is with sign language.
Wow.
It's still, using some symbolic form to frame your non-symbolic emotions or thoughts or all that stuff. So, we don't want to replace direct feeling with just naming everything. And also, we do want to add naming so that you can get a little bit of a distance from a feeling, so you're not swept up by it and lost in it and become it. You can just say, there is sadness because my guinea pig died. And that's what happens to us humans when we love somebody, and that somebody dies, even if it's a pet guinea pig. That's what we experience, sadness. And I can share it with you, not just in my tears, but I can name it to frame it like that.
Yeah. I guess that's another important part that I think you touch upon is like, obviously, as well as naming the each emotion, it's important, like, to, I guess, not to demonize any of them. Because I think that's something that I see a lot, like, in, to be sad or angry is like a bad thing. And if that's like rather than just naming it, and it's in the kind of quite a mindful way to just be, I'm experiencing sadness now, and that's okay. Or it's like, no, I need to stop feeling this because this is horrible. Or that kind of like. I feel like that's I've seen that quite common in a lot of kind of parenting styles. Is this maybe you're talking about emotions, but you want to avoid these ones, and then you kind of become shamed by.
Will, that's such an important thing you're mentioning, because whether it's just the emotion of sadness or anger, or when a kid becomes a teenager and becomes sexually active, and they're shamed for having this very human feeling, you do have a whole, process of, wanting your parents' approval. And so the way they are either accepting of your experience or judgmental will become internalized. And you yourself will be accepting of yourself or judgmental. So then if you have natural emotional responses to things going on in life, but there's a whole, chatterbox in your head that's judging you and condemning you for being a human, that's an exhausting way to live. And, those are the folks that often keep therapists busy, because you've been giving a painful legacy of self-judgment instead of self-acceptance,
Yeah.
So do you try and get some gap with mindsight? Is it so that there's the superconscious, the conscious, and the subconscious? Do you use those terms?
It's very interesting. About 30 years ago, when this whole journey really began, when I was done with my training, and I had learned those terms and learned a number of different schools of approaching psychotherapy, cognitive therapy, behavioral therapy, psychoanalytic-based therapy, as you're referring to, family therapy, group therapy, all these therapies. And there wasn't any overarching, like, foundation that linked all of these things together, even though we said we're all in the field of mental health. And these are some of the popular things you could do. In those days, we didn't have much research saying they worked or didn't work. But anyway, they were taught. That's what led me, as a person trained in science, to say, well, if we're all trying to do the same thing, help people reduce their suffering, one might think that there would be a common, foundation of knowledge that we could all draw on and do our individual work with families or groups or whatever, and not to try to make it one approach, but just say a foundation that supports all the approaches. Anyway, so that's that's what began this journey to try to bring what later on E.O. Wilson would use the term consilience, meaning independent pursuits, sort of like the Indian fable of the blind man and the elephant.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to know about the elephant. So someone studies the toe, someone studies the leg, someone studies the back, the ear, the trunk, the tusk, the tail, all this stuff. And you bring everybody together, and then you try to get a picture of the whole elephant.
I was going to call my podcast "The Blind Man and the Elephant."
Oh, really? That's perfect.
Yeah, because everyone has their own. Everyone's their little bit right, no?
Exactly. So you would be a consilient person, Jack, and consilience is it's an old English term from the 1800s that Wilson sort of brought back over 100 years later. It's a great term, and what it also does is allows you to be really curious and humble, because you're not trying to create a new foundation. You're trying to create a kind of a tent where all the different pursuits can come and respectfully offer their point of view. And when you get these different perspectives, then what you look for are the common ground. So one of the common ground findings that emerged was the idea that when you differentiate and link, and let's just call that integration, you get health. And this was whether you're looking at a culture or a group or a family or a kid or a brain. Integration, defined very clearly as the parts of a system are differentiated and then they're linked, seemed to be what optimized the flow, kind of like a choir singing in harmony. If you make all the choir members just sing the same note the same way, it's incredibly rigid. Or if you have them put on headphones so they can't hear each other and they belt out their own song, whatever they want to sing, it's cacophony. And that's like two banks outside of a river. One is chaos, one's rigidity, but the central flow is a flow of harmony. And that perspective, I remember being in this very room, reading a math book on systems, complex systems in particular, and it said optimal self-organization is the term. It depends on differentiating and linking and creates this harmony. And I thought, oh my God, that's like in a math book, the best definition of well-being I'd ever seen. And so that would be an example of a consilient finding. So you have math, you find it present in neuroscience, even though they're not naming it exactly like this way, you have to kind of read through the studies and see exactly what they're really looking at beyond their words. And then you go, wow, it is integration. And then a study came out in 2015, and one of our online students called us up at the office and said, did you see what came out today? And we go, what came out today? They go, you said all the studies of mental illness show impaired integration, which they do. Here's the first study to show every measure of well-being was predicted by one brain factor, and that was how integrated the brain was in what's called an interconnected connectome, is the way they call it. But it's how integrated the brain is. And a bunch of studies since then, like on mindfulness meditation, for example, show that it increases integration of the brain. So when you see well-being increase, you see integration increase. When you see integration decreasing, you see suffering happening. Well-being is decreasing. So that's an example of consilience. We say, we didn't invent that. We're just sitting in the tent saying, come on, everybody, tell us your wisdom. We want to see all the cool things you're discovering, and just be kind of like a party planner to invite everyone to the party and make its cool music. And we're not creating the dance. We're just letting everybody do the dance and see what rhythm comes up. And integration as health, for the last 25 years, nothing has disproved that, and tons of things have supported it. I still would be very nervous to say it's absolutely true, but so far I've had very eager, really bright interns who their task is to disprove this, and they cannot.
Because that chaos and rigidity is really, when I look at people with problems, they either have chaos or rigidity. I recognize that from what you were saying.
Jack, I thought I was losing my mind when I was a young therapist, because everyone that came to me, whatever their diagnosis was from the clinic, they were either chaotic or rigid. And I went, what's wrong with me? Am I like such a simpleton that I'm like reducing everybody to this, but it turns out that's true. And even when you look at the book, the Bible of mental disorders, everyone can be reinterpreted as chaos, rigidity, or both. It's like striking. And then the scientific guess is that's because impaired integration leads to chaos or rigidity. And then every disorder that's ever been studied has chaos or rigidity. So it was
Wow.
predicted in the early 90s. It was established, like 20 years later, but still it's predictable by the hypothesis. Integration is health.
That's great.
Yeah. Because with integration being like, because I know you talked about like how when children are growing up, the right side of the brain, is the right side the creative one, or is the left side the creative one?
They're both creative. So it's good. It's good, Will, you're wondering about that. So you want to say when they work together, integration is the base of creativity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how to remember it.
Ah, nice. Because is that? I guess that's like a common myth, right? That one side is the creative one side's like the logic one.
Yes, I mean we could spend a while on that. It's very controversial in the neuroscience field. People are very appropriately conservative and very wary of popularization. And so whenever I write about it, I have to be super knowledgeable about what the science actually
I saw
shows.
some people are quite angry about this. They get quite upset.
Angry.
Oh. Which
Oh
part of the
God.
brain is causing that?
Well, actually, that's an interesting one. The left hemisphere is a very the left is more like outward directed. The right is more inward. That's one way to think about it. And since anger is an outward directed emotion, when people get angry, their left brain is more activated. But emotion is in both sides of the brain. Creativity comes from the two sides being differentiated and linked. But you were bringing up the issue that the right hemisphere is more active early on and grows more early on.
Yeah.
And it's the one that's going to be deeply connected to the body. So an integrated map of the body, the inside of the body, is only in the right hemisphere, amazingly. Autobiographical memory, dominant in the right hemisphere. The baby, just the way to remember it, is nonverbal. They aren't speaking with words. And the right hemisphere is dominant for nonverbal communication, both sending it and receiving it.
Wow. And because with this idea that some people are this kind of chaos and rigidity, is there a certain, when there's, I guess, people with certain mental health conditions, or whether it's neurological or I don't know what the other version would be, like environmental, I guess. Like, is there a certain side of the brain that is to do with people being maybe too rigid in their like behavior or too chaotic? Are they related, or is it not simple as just one side is this, one side is not?
You can begin to get a feeling for it with, I think, your intuition, but you want to be very, very careful about this. So you never want to say someone is left-brained or someone's right-brained. I think the evidence is pretty clear. Both sides of the brain are working in everybody. But you can have a dominance of a mode that be left mode. So, for example, to really address your question, the left mode will take energy input and try to classify it in a very narrow way. Like if I say the word bank, for example, your left brain with language center says, does he mean a place to put money? Or does he mean how you lean when you're in a race? Or does he mean, when you're making a guess, you're banking on that being correct, right? What does he mean? And you want to know exactly what it is. And your left brain wants to have, what it has is a very narrow focus of attention. So it wants to be very specific. Now, that taken to the extreme could appear like rigidity, because do you mean this or this? You go, well, I'm not sure what I mean. Oh, tell me what you mean. It's like, whoa. So it's like too much control, really. And you want to predict. The left hemisphere is big into predicting what's going to happen next and wants to have plans and, put things in lists and stuff like this. That's the left dominant. In contrast, the right has a broader focus of attention, is the way to think about it. So it's seeing the connections among things. It's seeing not just the literal meaning of a sentence or a law. It wants to get the gist. What's the feeling of it? What's the meaning between the lines? That's the right hemisphere specialty. Now, taken to the extreme, then, you could drive yourself in a sense into chaos by, I'm just floating in, I'm never going to make a commitment to anything. I don't know. It's all like, all interconnected and there's no pattern. And so you can imagine a right mode dominant experience could enter this very non-specific thing that at the extreme you might call chaotic.
Yeah.
Now, that's just to build on your question. I don't think there's any research that shows that per se, but the feeling of it, if there were to be research on that, you might ultimately, if you could figure it out how to do that, find that goes like that. But it's probably more just broadly, you don't need to confine it to one hemisphere or the other, but that's just a gist of it.
No,
So if someone is too right mode, you want to help them become more specific. If someone who's really specific, you want to help them also become looser and not so driven for certainty. So you want to balance those two things.
That's what I was going to ask. Like, if the problem is so easy to diagnose, chaos or rigidity and interconnectedness is the solution. How do you practically is the solution as simple as the problem?
Yeah. So in the book Mindsight, I talk about 9 domains of integration, and so just to give you a flavor for them, one and any of the 9 domains can lead to chaos or rigidity. So the first step is, oh my God, there's chaos or rigidity in my life. Or, I saw someone last night, a patient, there was a lot of chaos in her life. So once I sense chaos in someone's life, I know from this pattern of reasoning, there's impaired integration somewhere. I don't know where, but likely somewhere. So then I go on an exploration with her to see, in the first domain of integration, you want to have consciousness be integrated, where you're differentiating the knowing of consciousness from the knowns. And some people can't do that at all. So when a known arises, it can flood them and they become very chaotic. So that could be what's going on in her. Another is memory integration. No, let's go to vertical integration first. Another is vertical integration, where, some people are not aware of their body. So their body's sending up signals and chaotically flooding them, but they never learned the tools of being aware of what's going on in their body. So that would be a vertical integration impairment, leading to chaos in this case. It could also be rigidity. There's bilateral integration, as we're talking about. Left and right need to be differentiated and linked for health and happiness and creativity, and even if you look at musicians, so a non-professional musician, music would be dominant in my right hemisphere, but for you, it becomes more bilateral. And so the left becomes more active, because you're using a lot of focused attention on creating music and listening to music that I just don't do, so it depends on the person. And I think the important thing is integration. If you look at a book called This Is Your Brain on Music by Dan Levitan, it's a great book, but and what's fascinating is melody literally integrates in the brain across time, because there are patterns that are familiar. So you're getting ready for that pattern to repeat, but then there's a deviation from it just enough to capture your attention because it's different from what you expected. So that's across time. And that the rhythm integrates the cortex. All that was cortical stuff going on. The rhythm is integrating the cortex with the body. So I was amazed to read that book and then find that ultimately music is integrative, which that wasn't surprising, but was such a joy. This is right when my son was, quote, choosing to go into music, which really wasn't a choice. But, and I said to him, this is cool. You're doing a very integrative thing, So that's bilateral integration. Then there's memory integration. There's different, and in this woman's case, there were certain issues of things she experienced that were not differentiated yet in her life. So they were intruding on her in something called implicit memory and leading to a lot of chaos. So she definitely had some vertical integration issues, some consciousness integration issues. She had the domain of memory integration. And then what narrative integration is it's how you make sense of experience. You make sense of your memory. And she definitely needs work there too. And then you move into what's called state integration. this is a kind of a fascinating thing about integration, is that we are all differentiated aspects. You can have a husband aspect, Will. You can have a father to be aspect. You can have a musician aspect. You can have a intellectual aspect, a goofy aspect, a serious aspect. We have many states. We're never homogenous. And in fact, if someone is trying to be just one state and fighting off these other states, that's impaired state integration, right? So knowing that we have lots of different ways of being can lead to a very flourishing life, and giving yourself time. So I've never developed my musical ability, but in the pandemic, I've started picking up a guitar. No one's listening, close the door. And before I go to sleep, I play guitar. And just the other day, I went for a hike with my son, and I've never done this before. And I said, I've got this riff I've been working on that I want to share with you. He goes, what? I said, I've been working on this riff of minor chords. I don't know what it is. Let me play for you. So he comes up to my room. He lies down on my bed. I start playing the riff, and he gets this huge smile on his face. He goes, Dad, that is beautiful. And it was, the first time I've ever shared music with him. But for all these months, the music was just very private, just letting stuff happen. And I'm sure it's very left and right, especially with the guitar, well, maybe any instrument. But so, wow. So that allowed this musical state to start flourishing. And I've been sleeping incredibly well, playing music rather than reading a book before I go to bed. Yeah, it's just been absolutely amazing. And so that's state integration. And then there's something called temporal integration, which is, how we have these different aspects of time, but also you may long to be reincarnated or long to live forever. But in fact, one view is that we have mortality. So how you come to wrestle with these existential issues. And then there's interpersonal integration, which we talked about, how you can allow your differentiation from your child will, so that she's going to be able to sense her autonomous, differentiated selfhood reflected in the way you're open to who she actually is. But then there'll be a compassionate connecting linkages. So that'll be an integrated relationship. That's interpersonal integration. Then finally, there's something called identity integration, which is, I think this is like the biggest challenge for humanity, is that modern culture has told us we're like a self that's totally separate, when in fact, we are profoundly relational. So then how we come to live as not just a me, but also a we, our fun way of trying to remember that integrated identity would be me plus we is mwe, MWE. And mwe is a fun word that just reminds us that if we raise children in modern times, as we've been doing, to think they're separate, personally, they're going to suffer. The way they treat other people who are not like them is not going to be good, not going to be integrated. And the way they treat nature will be as if it's just all separate. Instead, we reminds us that we are a human family. We're all siblings in this human family. And we are fundamentally intra-connected within nature, not even interconnected, like I'm connected there. No, I am nature. We are nature. We are nature. And this is just a fun thing. So those are the 9 domains of integration.
So would you say your Nobel Prize idea? Is that the biggest thing you've come up with in your career?
I wouldn't use the word Nobel Prize myself, but if you mean, is that like the thing, I'm reading this really cool book by Adam Grant called Think Again, which urges you never to believe in your own thoughts. So Jack, you're asking it. You're the first time someone's asked me something like that ever, but also I get the gist of what you're saying. Is this like your main thing? And having been reading Adam's book, first of all, I'm a very doubting person. I doubt even my own doubts. I'm just constantly doubting. And that really fits well to be a scientist, because you're always supposed to look at, patterns and then doubt whether the pattern's there, and then try to prove that what you think is there is not there. And, that's what we're trained to do in science. And that's great if it's done well. And so that suits me. But as a clinician, I have to make some suggestions for my patients, And certainly as a parent, you've got to make decisions on your parenting strategy. So whether it's a parent or a therapist or even an educator, I've got to take a stance on things. So I would say, Jack, to your question, in the journey as a scientist to try to figure what is the mind and what is a healthy mind, these 9 domains are something that stood the test of time. That doesn't mean they're real and true, but they seem to be useful, at least. That I can tell you for sure. And do I stand by them? Yes. Do I doubt them all the time? Um, do I welcome people to say they're really ridiculous? Absolutely. And then show me, the beef, as they say in America, show me how they're ridiculous. And so far, no one's been able to do that. So I hope I'm thinking again enough for Adam Grant's criteria to never be too arrogant or sure of yourself that you become, he glorifies a scientist and pits them in a sense against preachers, politicians, and what's the other thing with a P? Prosecutors. He says, don't be any of those three. So I don't want to preach to you, Jack and Will. I just wanted to say, as a scientist, this looks like it is. And then as a clinician, I would say, yeah, try it out, see if it works. And as a father and a parenting educator, I would say, I stand by this. I think this is what all across cultures, the patterns say integrative parenting is kind of the way to do it. And you can do it across all these domains. Does that answer your question, Jack?
Awesome.
I know I'm trying to. Yeah.
It does, yes. Because your greatest hits, because for Will and I, it's easier. We just have to open Spotify, have a look which songs are the top. And those are our greatest ideas of things we've made.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's so funny how that works these days. But it really gives you guys independence. I mean, it's been incredible.
But I like to write about big ideas, because I also interviewed Stephen C. Hayes. So I wrote about
great.
acceptance, commitment therapy.
Yeah, of course.
So it's nice to preserve and also share. I also wrote a song about logotherapy.
Yeah.
I
think the person who did the filming at a number of our things is the grandson of Viktor Frankl. Yeah. Wow. So if you ever want to meet him, let me know. He did a great documentary of himself with his grandfather called Victor and I.
Oh,
yeah, and really, if you want to link to him, let me know, because you'd probably enjoy meeting him. The thing I would say about this field, we have 75 textbooks. People tell us we're the largest mental health series in the world. We've sold over 1 million copies, which for professional books is like unheard of. We have, and I'm the founding editor of it. People say, what form of therapy is that? And this is what I say. I say, it is absolutely not a form of therapy like cognitive therapy or ACT or something like that. It's not a form of therapy. It informs therapy. It's a way of looking at reality, So it informs therapy, and it is what I longed for was a foundation. Now we have this 75 textbook library. It's a foundation of knowledge that's science-based, that makes a proposal for what the mind is, makes a proposal for what mental health is, and then gives you pathways to create mental health. So if your thing is to do ACT, great. If your thing is to do EMDR or do cognitive therapy, great. Psychoanalytic therapy, great. We welcome everybody, and we say let's help the world, and let's also have a foundation, a framework that's consilient, that invites all the different ways of knowing, and not just science, but the arts, music, poetry, indigenous teachings, contemplative wisdom. We invite everybody in.
That must be very fulfilling for you, because I know you used to work on suicide hotlines when you were in grad school, and you always wanted to make your mission to. This was your life's work, so you must be so fulfilled.
It's both fulfilling and sometimes lonely, because, I mean, yeah, it is. There's no question it's fulfilling, and so the answer is yes. And I would add that, this journey's been somewhat lonely, because, one of my feet is in academics, and academics don't particularly like this approach. If you've spent your life in one particular area of the elephant, and you think you've seen the whole thing,
you've got to go up to the trunk now.
Yeah, that kind of gets you agitated. So I've had some people chase me down hallways to stop yelling at me, literally yelling at me to stop saying what I'm saying. And I don't want to be a preacher or a prosecutor or a politician. I want to be of help to people, more like a clinician, an educator. Yeah. So I really respect what Adam Grant is saying. And at the same time, I think we're kind of lost as a humanity. We're certainly getting worse mental health conditions on the planet. We're destroying nature. We have incredible racism and social injustice. So, sometimes you just have to really think deeply about something, see what the Consilience view is, and then kind of make a stance that has question marks all around it. So, I wrote a book about this journey called Mind, where the entire book is a set of questions, and so the lonely part has been, it's just in my original field of academics, it's been amazing how unopen people are, and they're very siloed, and even in the book Consilience by E.O. Wilson, he talks about how the very economic and political and social structure of universities keep them siloed. Right. So it isn't just like, oh, too bad they're siloed. It's like, that's why I left the university, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. In my own field, I'm studying metaphysics, and we say the brain is a radio. So all mind is external. So you're just picking up what you're tuned into, just like a radio receiver. So obviously you were very tuned into this field, so you received this information.
Nice. So how do you go about taking what we've been talking about, and I guess being radios in that sense, and turning into music? Are you going to do that now, or are you going to do that on your own later on?
Well, we all have, every songwriter has a different style. I don't know what Will is, but I tend to, pick up the guitar now, or maybe early in the morning, and it'll just come out somehow. I kind of receive it. Channeling more than
being an antenna and letting it just channel through you. Yeah.
What's your technique, Will?
For me, I'd say lyrically, I probably work on it immediately afterwards. Just more like I probably would ask for the recording as well, just to like, if that's possible. But I feel like I have an idea musically what it will sound like already, but lyrically, no idea yet. The music is always the thing that when I'm thinking about a song, it kind of it happens quite quickly. I have an idea of how I would like it to sound. That doesn't always match the reality of how it ends up sounding, but at least there's an approach there. So yeah, I'm imagining something quite ambient and piano based. That would be. So I'm probably nothing too major or minor. Something kind of neutral that dips. Ebbs and flows.
Oh, beautiful! I can't wait to hear it. And I'm available if you want to, check in about any particular part of it as you go along.
Are you available for a rhythm guitar part as well?
I felt really bold going and inviting my son to listen. I'd have to think about. I'll tell you, I used to be in dance, and in college I was a ballroom dancer, and when people would tell me how to dance, it was terrible. I was like 2 left feet, and it was terrible. I didn't do well at all. But if you just put me on the dance floor without anyone judging me, or then things worked out really well. I was once working in Puerto Rico as a medical student, and I just went with another medical student to a dance competition just for absolute fun. This is in Puerto Rico, where they were doing the samba and the cha-cha for real. I mean, this is how they grew up doing this, and I'm just like some white guy from America who learned it in college, So she said, let's sign up for the competition. So I said, whatever. Fine, we'll just, what is there to lose? I'm here in Puerto Rico. Anyway, we won the international competition for the rumba. And, cause cause I didn't care. It's not that I didn't care. I cared, but I wasn't worried about judgment. I guess that's what I mean by that. So the freedom for me as a dancer, it was so different than when a teacher was there going, your left foot is here, your right foot's there, and then it's almost like my left brain gets involved and says, "Oh, do it right, make your teacher happy." Oh my God, did she say left? No, but maybe it was right. What'd she say? And then I'm like, oh, and you go, "What's that guy doing on a dance floor?" But then if there's no one judging, even if in this case, it was a competition. But I didn't feel judged because I wasn't worried about the outcome. Then it seems to work. So I've noticed that. So in terms of your question, I'd have to really let the worried about judgment aspect of me like go to the side and say, I'm just going to be with the guitar and with you, like I was with my son, just letting it happen. And then I would feel okay doing it. But if I didn't feel like I could, let the inner editor, critic, worrywart, take a break, then it would sound so stilted. You would go, "Ooh, no, 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 no," and I would agree with you. And even as a writer, I got to say, I notice that difference. I'll let the writing happen, but then if I send it to my publisher and she says, "Do this, this, and this, and this," and then my critic that wants to please her comes in, the writing is totally different. It feels different. It's stilted.
Yeah.
It's just too like trying to do something for somebody else because that's what it's trying to do. And I don't like it. She doesn't like it. So it's a real, you really have to put on a different hat as a writer and then try to make sure the editor doesn't like get in the way of that flow. So it's, but you probably experience that, I guess, in music, to let yourself just tap into being that channel, being that antenna. I once had we were throwing a conference with the Dalai Lama once on compassion and empathy. And someone knew I lived in Los Angeles, so said, we heard Carlos Santana, is really into meditation. Can you call him up? You're in Los Angeles. We hear he's in Los Angeles. I said, come on. I'm in LA. He's in LA. I can't just call someone up. I said, I'm not doing that. That doesn't make any sense just because we live in the same town. No. They said, okay. So they tried to reach him. He couldn't do it. He was busy doing some concert somewhere. Anyway, I'm teaching in Germany at a conference on meditation and with a bunch of monks, right, who are in their orange robes. We go to the hotel, breakfast area, and I sit down to have breakfast with the monks. And some guy with a hat comes over. He sits down. He goes, do you mind if I sit here with you? I go, no, that's fine. Even though it's just people in the conference. He's not in the conference, I don't think. So we're chatting. I said, what do you do? He goes, I play guitar. I said, oh, cool. And I said, and it's Carlos Santana that I'm having breakfast with, who was teaching like 2 hours away. So I said, can you tell me how music is for you? He goes, all I can say is I'm a hose. And I go, what do you mean you're a hose? He goes, I don't do anything. I just let, I don't know if he said God or just the spirits or whatever, just like you're saying, Jack. He goes, I just have to get out of my way and let the stuff flow through me. And then it comes out. I can't tell you anything more than that. And it was beautiful. He was, it was just really beautiful. We had a great breakfast together. But I thought about, what you're saying, Jack, about what's going on that I was supposed to call him. And a week later, I'm in Germany having breakfast with him, and he even said, I told him, I was supposed to reach out to you for a conference on compassion. And he goes, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I have a concert somewhere else. I can't do it. I said, yeah, no, I heard. And it was just like, you got to wonder sometimes how life is. And then when you give into that, you just say, why would human beings be able to understand everything and just enjoy that kind of literally letting yourself be a hose and letting love really flow through? That's probably what Carlos said. He probably said letting the love flow through and watering the garden, with the love that flows through you like water through a hose.
Poetic.
Yeah. It was very inspiring,
But when I speak to a lot of people who are doing these podcast interviews with, they've been studying their field for years, and at the end of it, they say like physics professors, they say at the end we don't really know anything, and I kind of know what you're saying now is you've been studying the mind for years. You're a professor of psychiatry, and he says, yeah, it's best if you don't use it.
Right. Yeah. Well, here's the thing about that is that and this is the strange thing about doing the wheel of awareness with so many people. When people get in that hub of the wheel, they describe three things which spell the word coal. They describe, I feel incredibly connected to people, to nature, to life, to some people say God, to everything, to the universe. So connected is the first letter. Then they're in this open awareness. So there's this kind of sense of presence, this just this openness there within awareness. That's OA. And the L is love. And it's described so much that sometimes people just start crying. And as a scientist, I just couldn't help wonder if these are like three threads of a singular tapestry of life. You know, connection, open awareness, love are like what the universe is made of. And I don't come from a spiritual background. I don't come from a religious background. I'm a scientist and a clinician and an educator, you know, but when you do this with, you know, now it's been 50,000 people in person, and just the ones who take the microphone and start saying this, it doesn't happen with everybody, but for those who do speak up, or one person even wrote a note to me that she felt these things. She goes, I didn't want to seem like I was bragging, so I'm giving you a note. I've never felt so much love and connection before in my life. You know, it's this beautiful little note I still have, you know, but that's what people say when they're bold enough to take the microphone. So as a scientist, I just have to ask the question, could it be that, you know, love and awareness and connection are really the fabric of the universe? And so the music you two are making and being that antenna, being the hose, as Carlos Santana would say, you know, really all of us are just like in these embodied manifestations, hoses through which love can flow. And then, and I say this as a scientist, if you start living like that, it is awesome, because all your job is to do is to let love and life light the way. And I say this purely as a scientist, you know, that's the only, it's not even an explanation. It's the only like way of articulating what the observation has been of people's direct experience when they get in this hub. So then once you start living with that almost like a guiding light, and realize you can dip into aspects of living that are timeless, you stop worrying about things like dying. You do want to make the world a better place. You do want to stay healthy and bring, you know, well-being into the world. And at the same time, it sort of drops your worry level because you kind of feel this sense of the infinite.
I'm full of inspiration now. I can't. Just please stop.
I will, because actually I have to go talk to a bunch of medical professionals who are suffering so much with the COVID story. And a bunch of us are getting together, and, you know, we're going to do this hour immersion with them. We got, I think 2,500 medical professionals, been frontline workers. And so we're going to give them some tools on like, what do you do to try to keep hope alive and keep your resilience going? You know, because we're all in this together in humanity. So, and music is a part of that. And I'm going to say that today. You know, it's like this is our collective job to help each
thanks,
other.
Dan.
You know, so
yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, Will. And call me if you want to talk more. And it's been really a lot of fun to be here with you.
Take care.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Good luck with everything. Can't wait to hear.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow. Are you inspired?
It was
Will?
intense. I feel like
It was,
there's
wasn't
a
it?
lot. Yeah. No, it was amazing though. I feel like it didn't go where I thought it would go, but it kind of, yeah.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, because, you know, so many books, and you listen to them, it's hard to understand until you actually speak to someone, you know, what they're all about,
yeah,
really.
and it did surprise me. I feel like it felt like a more kind of a talking to like a kind of a spiritual kind of guy than a scientist. Or like, obviously there was like, but no, it was. I'm excited to have a go.
I guess it's like he said, you know, he's just a researcher, and he did this for 50,000 times. You know, this wheel of awareness, which I'm not actually quite too clear about what that is.
I didn't want to.
I think it's on his website. Yeah. I think we have to do that.
Yeah, we definitely do the wheel of awareness.
Yeah. Because then, and I guess if you just see these patterns repeating, you know, you can't deny that much evidence, really. So.
Oof. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
when you've written with other, like, because you've had other musicians that have written songs separately, I guess, is there like a fear that our themes will clash, or that, like, or are you not worried too much about, like?
Well, you have priority, your style and your sound, because I've done so many, and it's a collaboration with you, so it appears on your music streaming with both our names, so it should fit seamlessly into your sound. And my sound has been, I've done reggae, rock, folk, pop, so I'm just a mess of chaos. I mean, very much in the chaos, and you're more rigid.
Yeah.
So if we can integrate, then I think we'll just create a beautiful baby.
Cool. All right.
Great. Well, I'm super excited to hear what you come up with, and if I get any ideas as well, I'll send you an MP3, and we can see how it goes.
Awesome. Oh well, thank you so much for asking me and involving me and organising it for me to get to speak to Dan and listen to Dan. He's a fascinating guy.
No worries. It was a pleasure. Thanks so much for coming. You added a lot to the conversation.
Thanks very much. All right, man. Well, I'll speak to you very soon.
Okay. Well, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Once in June, Dan explained to me a rhyme that I could use to reinforce the undivided love I promise unto you. And it was simply, where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. To you I dedicate my attention, in the hope that it fills you with energy to take on this world. 'Cause where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. There'll be no energy wasted on shame. The only exchange is the fruit of integration, so we avoid rigid or chaotic frustration. 'Cause where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows. Where attention goes, neural firing flows and neural connection grows.
Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show and the song. If you want to hear the song again, it's available on all music streaming services or for a $1 download from podsongs.com. You can also subscribe there for our newsletter, for all other news and updates. A big thanks to our musical production team here in Italy, Maurizio Sanicola, Massimino Vozza, and Luigi Falcione, and my researcher, Dori Verbo. Please help us by sending this episode to your friends, sharing it on social media, and reviewing it wherever you can. I also have another show to listen to. It's called The Mystic Cast, and it's about spirituality, UFOs, mysticism, the occult, and the Etheria Society, the teachings of which led me to start this project, serving the servers, helping those who help others. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a great day.